Hi, this is Granny B of Granny B Crochets, and we're going to talk about the necessary evil to a lot of people of weaving into ends. I love colors. I make very few things that are all one color. Usually they're out of necessity, like a sweater to go with an outfit. Most of my projects have lots of different colors in them, but the downside to that is you end up with these ends. Now, most people hate weaving in the ends. I'll let you know. I'm kind of weird. It doesn't bother me at all. I put on a chick flick and just sit there and weave them in. I find it just as soothing as crocheting, but I am kind of unusual. So you're going to need your piece that has a bunch of ends. I picked this one because it's got some solids and some loose ones. And you're going to need a yarn needle. Now you can, if you're using thick yarn, this one should work pretty well. It's got a nice big eye on it, and it's got a blunt tip though. So, but it works for most projects. This second one, and it's really my favorite, especially when I'm working with this thinner yarn. This is a 3-weight yarn. Is this one? It's the biggest eyed tapestry needle I could find, and it has a sharp tip. And the reason I like the one with the sharp tip is you can kind of weave your threads into the other yarn pieces and they stay better. So let's get started. Now I always start in the middle. Now I have to take it off camera to thread it. Hold on. Okay. So if you start with a magic circle, check out my magic circle video. It'll tell you how to weave that one in. But this is basically the same idea. When I'm working with the middle, I'm going to take it and I'm going to run it under the stitches one direction. And then I'm going to pull it tight. And as much as possible, you want to weave your colors, you want to weave your colors in to the same color they are. So it makes them less visible, or completely invisible, actually. I've yet to learn to do this in camera, so sorry. Okay, now we're back. So once I go one direction, then I go down and I skip a stitch or two and go back the other direction. So it's crossing over itself. Now this is a tight stitch. I used the crochet hook size it calls for to use this yarn. So my stitches are pretty tight, and that should be sufficient for holding my yarn end in place. But if you're using a crochet hook that is bigger than the yarn calls for, and if you're not sure if you are, just check the package. It'll tell you the size that is normally used with that yarn on the package. And let me see, I do. I have a wrapper right here. I'll show you. Okay, so you can look on your package. If you look on the package, you find, this is backwards because of the way my camera is, but if you find where the little crochet hook is, it will tell you what size hook is normally used with that yarn. If you're using a bigger hook than that, you're going to want to go back a third time through your project. This also, if you use a pointed needle, a sharp needle like I have, you can do this. You can go through the stitches, through the yarns instead of under them. And if you go through the yarns like that, as you're going back, it helps secure that end in there really tight. And then you can clip it off. And there we go. Our center is completely done and all pretty. Now, that was an easy one because it's in the center and it had all these beautiful thick stitches to go through. But now, as we work our way out, things are getting a little chain-like, and the space between the stitches, and it's going to get a little more complicated. And again, this is where I love my sharp needle. So we're going to So when I'm working with something like this, I'm going to do a couple of different things. One, I'm going to go ahead and go back through underneath some stitches. Like so. And then I'm going to go up through some stitches this way. I can just pierce right through the threads with your sharp needle. And then I'm going to turn this and I'm going to go back down the way I came. And every time you turn around and go down, don't go directly back where you came out. You want to skip over that stitch and go back through some other stitches. Work my way. So I'm going to go through some stitches back down. And I'm going to go back through that again. Then I'm going to turn. And I'm going to finish off by going through the threads of that last bit. And now that's woven in and it's not going anywhere. And I can cut it off. So I have another project though. I want to show you something. If you've got a project that has lots of chains and not a lot of places to weave in, and I made an Afghan. I'll show it to you here in a second. But I made this Afghan that it had a lot of chains to it. The edges were nothing but chains and treble crochets, which if you don't know what that is, you wrap the yarn around your hook 3 times. And so it's a really long, loose stitch, especially when I make it because I can't make them very tight. And so there's really nothing for your yarn to grip into. So I'm going to use this edge to show you what I do in that kind of a situation. So if I'm trying to weave in ends and I've got lots of chains or big stitches and not too many nice snug spots like this to weave into, I do this. I go through and around the chain itself. So I just stitch right through the chain, not around it, but through it. And weave it in that way. And then when I go to finish this square, whether I'm going to, so if it's a big project, and whether I'm going to put an edging on it or whatever, I can crochet right over that and it's going to stay in place. But if this is the edge and that's all there is, you can't really see it because you're weaving it into the same color. But it lets it be a little more secure. So that, again, I turn and go back the other way because I always like to reverse on myself. It kind of makes things a little... And then at some point, somewhere, you're going to be at a spot where there's either a big stitch or something on the back that you can weave through. So again, I take my little pointy needle and I'm going to go through some stitches down to here, like that. And so if you've got a lot of chains on your edge, that's something you can do to kind of hide your end, weave your end in when you don't have a lot of stitches to weave it under. Because I do have a lot of stitches, I'll go ahead and weave it through here at the end just to make sure it stays, because I have that corner. And there's usually some place, even when you have a lot of chains or big stitches, there's usually some place you can eventually get to that you can weave it in under a bigger spot. So you can just, like I said, you just kind of run the yarn around through your chain stitches or your loose stitches till you get to a corner or a place where it is a little bit thicker, and then you can run your yarn under those stitches, and if necessary, turn and go back again. So that's how you weave in your ends. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them, and I'll be glad to answer them. Or if I wasn't clear enough and you let me know, I'll make a clearer video. But this is how you weave in ends when you've got, even when I don't have, like this, I have a lot of open work on this, and so I want to hide my ends in the open work. But even when I'm working with a solid piece, I still go through the stitches, skip one turn, and go back the other way. Even when it's a nice solid piece with nice tight stitches, because it just, by skipping a little strand and going back the other way, it just makes that end a lot more secure. If you hate weaving in ends, there's a couple of options. One, do them as you go, because if you don't like weaving in your ends, and even as much as I like them, sometimes a whole blanket's worth of ends can be overwhelming. You can, I weave mine in as I do my job, do my work. The other thing you can do is learn to make a weaver's knot. And I know weaver's knot is a little scary for some people, but I love it for color changes. I especially if the section I want to color change is small, I use the weaver's knot, and it doesn't come undone if you tie it correctly. And there's lots of videos out there on how to do that. And then you don't have any ends to weave in. So that's an option too. All right, give me just a second. I'm going to get that other afghan I want to show you real quick. So this is the afghan I made that had lots of big stitches and chains, and so it made the ends really hard to weave in. But I did like I showed you. I just wrapped them around the chains at the end, and then because I just didn't want them to come undone, I did a single crochet around all those chains and around the edge. It wasn't what the pattern called for, but it turned out really pretty, and it covered up all those ends for me. So that's something else you can do. If you don't want to weave all the ends and they're all on the end of your blanket, you can just lay them across the edge and just crochet over them as you're going along. All right, so I hope I gave you some helpful tips. Happy crocheting, and we'll talk again later. Bye.